Welcome back to News Now Overnight. Now, Budget 2023 has evoked mixed reactions, but let's in fact listen into what the Chief Economic Advisor, Mr. Nageswaran, had to tell us about his take on the budget. Here's an exclusive conversation with my colleague, Pranesh Roy.
This is a special broadcast a day after the budget on Times Now. Mr. V Nageswaran is joining us, the Chief Economic Advisor, Government of India. Needs no introduction. Sir, thank you for speaking to Times Now. Coming first to the middle class, the new tax regime has been made the default regime. And there have been, as you're aware, some incentives announced by a way of revision of the tax slabs in the new regime. Now, how do you see this move amid criticism that making the new regime the default regime may not have been the right thing to do?
No. It is the default regime. That particular mode, new or old, depending on the amount of deductions they want to claim and determining for themselves what the break-even point is, and therefore there is no problem. Nobody is being compelled to choose one particular regime which may or may not suit them. Now, that is not the point at all.
Okay, now Dr. Nageswaran, I understand the point that you're making, but I'll tell you the criticism, and it's coming from former Finance Minister, Mr. P. Chidambaram of the Congress Party. He is saying that the new tax regime anyway had few takers, and by making it a default regime, which you are saying it is not the case, the benefits of the old regime would be lost to those who would make the transition.
That each one can make the choice depending on how they want to make their plans. I mean, if you are an old taxpayer who has multiple savings options, then you will, and you have those deductions, then you will end up choosing that option and paying the higher taxes. But by the way, the national pension scheme is allowed under both the schemes. So some of the new taxpayers may choose to save in the national pension scheme instead of looking at ATC, some other tax saver bonds. So they have to make extra effort to avail of multiple deductions under the old scheme. In the new scheme, they can choose to keep it simple. So the choice is available to the taxpayers to decide whether they want to keep it simple because they want to enjoy the disposable income in their hands and make their own choices in equity markets, etc., and not necessarily invest in tax saving options. So as long as the optionality rests with the taxpayers, where is the issue?
Okay. Let's see if that answer convinces those who are questioning this move, who are not happy with this.
Well, it will convince those who have an open mind, for sure.
Okay. Now, Dr. Nageswaran, let me ask you this. This government, as you've seen in the budget, has bet big on capital expenditure with almost 10 lakh crores. But there is a concern, sir, about how this money is going to be raised. Now, the fiscal deficit target is 6.4% of the GDP, but is 10 lakh crores an ambitious amount? How are you seeing this?
10 lakh crores may be considered ambitious because of the 33% increase over the current year's expected revised estimates for capital expenditure. But for an economy that is in the transition path from lower middle income to middle income, and given the country's estimated investment needs, this is on par.
Okay, so you don't believe, you are saying that this is a realistic target and we will achieve this. We'll have no problems.
No, if you look at the previous 2 years, the union government has been able to achieve the amount of capital expenditure goals it has set for itself.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the disinvestment. Do you think is disinvestment still a concern? The government had set a target of 65,000 crores, achieved 31,000 crores, and has now revised its target to 51,000 crores.
Well, I mean, the disinvestment target is a function of many factors, including market conditions. At the same time, there are many schemes that are available. The government continues to enjoy dividends from public sector enterprises, etc., which is also a kind of income that the government gets from its stakeholding in public sector enterprises. So as and when the market conditions suggest that disinvesting from a particular enterprise or enterprises makes sense from the economic standpoint, the government would pursue that option.
Okay. Now, there are other criticism also, sir, that has come after the budget, and then the primary among the charge is that this is not a pro-poor budget. For instance, the Manrega allocation has fallen, so has the food subsidy allocation. PM Kisan compared to the budget estimates has fallen as well, and petroleum subsidies have been slashed by half. Your take on that?
You have packed multiple questions into one. So let me start with the Manrega. If you look at the allocation to PM Awas Yojana, particularly the rural PM Awas Yojana, the allocation has gone up from around 20,000 crores to 54,000 crores. That would naturally require people to construct these houses, and which means they would get gainful employment. The Jal Jeevan Mission allocation has increased significantly, and that would also require labor to complete those projects. So naturally, the expectation is that the allocation to some other rural capital expenditure projects such as Jal Jeevan Mission and Awas Yojana would deploy rural labor, and therefore to that extent, labor that would be looking for guaranteed employment compensation would come down. But however, if the situation turns out that there is a demand for National Rural Employment Guarantee, then it will be provided because it is an on-demand program, partly because of improving economy and partly because the expectation that rural labor will be absorbed in these schemes, then naturally then the allocation for NREGA is anticipated to fall. Now coming to the PM Kisan, no eligible beneficiary under PM Kisan will be left out. PM Kisan allocation has been lowered because it reflects a cleaning up of the database, weeding out ineligible beneficiaries, but no eligible farmer will be left out. And it does not mean that the eligible farmers will be excluded from the PM Kisan cash compensation. On the contrary, the savings that is expected to accrue because the database is cleaned up is being reflected in the lower allocation. It does not mean that some farmers who deserve to get it will be excluded. And your third
about the petroleum subsidy, yes.
Yeah, I mean, again, last year, the government fully absorbed the cost of fertilizers and cut excise duties on petrol and diesel twice. And the expectation is that the fertilizer prices will not be will not be experiencing the kind of price rise that would require the government to continue to subsidize. But nonetheless, the allocation for the fertilizer subsidy is indeed higher than the budget estimate of the previous year. And in fact, significantly higher. And so this is the last year's subsidies were necessitated by an extremely sharp rise in the prices. The expectation is that the prices in the oil markets would not necessitate such a subsidy payment.
So does that mean relief for the Aam Aadmi as we move ahead?
Relief for the Aam Aadmi should come from international commodity prices and therefore without having to undertake revisions. And second, relief to the Aam Aadmi comes from the fact that the government would be meeting the entire food cost till the food allocations reach them, and relief to the Aam Aadmi comes from the tax changes that would put more money in their hands, with taxable income up to 7 lakhs going to be not subjected to any tax whatsoever. So relief to the Aam Aadmi comes through multiple initiatives.
Okay, now sir, let's talk about the other emphasis that one saw in the budget speech, and it's about skilling. Now, Dr. Nageswaran, the Skill Development Ministry has been around for 7-8 years now, 8 years, and its track record, many people believe, is not the best. What do you think is the government's thinking behind this?
The government continues to believe that skilling is an important priority, and especially some of the skills that India would require for the 21st century would need to be part of the agenda. And naturally, both the program objective and the program delivery process will be looked into as we go into the financial year.
Now, Dr. Nageswaran, the criticism has also been that in terms of indirect taxes, there's been no slashing of the GST rates, and that the burden on the poor and the middle class remains unchanged.
The GST rates on average, effective GST tax rate was originally envisaged revenue neutral rate at 15%. It is now at 11%. So GST effective tax rates have come down since the time GST came into existence. and number of items that attract 0 or 5% GST rates have only expanded over the years. And third, GST rates are decided at the GST Council. Indirect taxes have not been in the last several years part of the budget.
Now, before I let you go, sir, on the issue of energy transition and the emphasis on green energy and green hydrogen in light of our net zero commitments, Dr. Nageswaran, some skeptics believe that this might be difficult to achieve for the simple reason that this still remains enormously reliant on fossil fuels. Our oil imports, if you see, continue to be high.
That's the whole idea, isn't it? The idea is to reduce the dependence.
So you're saying steps will be taken so that that happens. This becomes a reality.
We are already running ahead of our target with respect to the proportion of renewable energy in our energy mix, and we are only further upping our goals because we have defined our nationally defined contributions. We have revisited them, updated them, and we are, in fact, therefore, the budget provides for a lot of initiatives in order to hasten and accelerate this transition, which is already on the right track.
Now, finally, Dr. Nageswaran, you were there when the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman described the budget as a beautifully balanced budget. How would you describe it?
I would say it is a very fiscally responsible, growth-oriented budget, and which at the same time makes sure that more purchasing power is in the hands of the people.
Okay, so you believe that this is a budget that will empower the people?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. V Anantha Nageswaran, the Chief Economic Advisor, Government of India. Thank you for your time, sir. Thank you for breaking this down and answering these questions.